Joe's gift to the world.
My gift to the world. So, Avin, you bothered me. I will say bothered, but you greatly recommended Andor for like a
Yes.
month. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'll watch it when I get time. And then I started watching it, and I was like, OMG, this show.
Yeah.
So just for a heads up for everybody, we are going to spoil Andor. So if you have watched all of Andor, you can listen to this. If not, walk away, finish Andor, and then come back and listen to the podcast. And
Or if you don't care about spoilers, you can go through.
yeah, so my wife will be listening to this because she doesn't care about spoilers. There's other people out there that just don't care about spoilers whatsoever, and they will just watch.
It doesn't ruin the glory of the show. There is no giant, great surprise
No.
that would be ruined listening through it. However, experiencing it on your own is something that a lot of people love. So if you don't like spoilers, 100%.
Yeah, walk away. Yeah, if you want to be surprised with everything.
Tell you've watched it.
Yeah, I mean,
To Joe. So to Joe. After all that, extolling of the virtues of Andor, what were your thoughts on Andor?
I mean, it's like the best Star Wars thing I've seen in a long time. I mean, it's the best series I've seen in a long time because, everybody that doesn't like sci-fi or thinks Star Wars is goofy, I get it. They're space wizards, they have laser swords, but this takes all that away and says, what if it's just normal people having to deal with fascism? Really? I mean, there's a lot of parallels, obviously, to nowadays with what is allowed. But what I like about Andor is it does show how inept the Empire is and how lazy they are, kind of, where they have people already under the thumb. They don't really have to try that hard. They've already subjugated planets. They kind of take over stuff. But as other characters point out, which I have the cast list here because I always forget the cast list. Oh no, I clicked on somebody's. So I did want to say the woman who plays the ISB agent, Denise, her real name's Denise Goya. Anyway, she is an actress. She was amazing in the show. She also does the voice of Yennefer of Venderberg in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. So if you play that game, she does that. But I think what I find amazing about the show is that I'm trying to see if they have. Oh, right here. His real name was Alex Lothar, and he played Karis Nemec. He was a young rebel person on Andor's big heist they did against the Empire, the stealing the payroll. He was the one that was very young and impressionable and said all the things about that we read about in college about how bad fascism is and all that, which isn't bad, but you could tell he was very young and excited. And I like the juxtaposition with him and Andor basically telling him to relax, stuff like that. And he kind of comes back towards the last episode in the form of his manifesto that's like an audio diary, basically, where it looked like he was writing and taking notes as well as recording his thoughts. And I think the last line, I didn't have time to rewatch the episode, but I think at the end of the last episode, before Andor goes back to town to visit the funeral of his mother, the last line that the revolutionary guy had before he died or in his diary was, you at least have to try. That's the most important part when you're fighting fascism or imperial rule or whatever. Yeah, tyranny is try. And so, yeah, I think what's really good with Andor, a lot of people, I read comment boards and listened to different reviews, he was really reluctant in the idea that he wanted to run. He didn't really want to deal with the Empire, but the fact that there's nowhere to go. Sooner or later, they're going to keep taking more systems, and although it's hard and difficult for them to, they will keep continuing to try to do that. So he basically had, I think in a way, it's good that the last thing he heard before he went into town to break his friend. I thought it was Biggs. I thought her name was Biggs, but it's actually not Biggs. Bix. Was he broke her basically out of the clink. She got arrested and tortured. But that was the last thing he heard from the audio diary of Karis was try. And I think that's what it is, is at least trying to give a crap that something is happening. You got to do something basically. So.
Yeah. I mean, and I think Karis, I didn't know that was his name. had forgotten it.
I think maybe one character says it to him or whatever, because they keep calling him the kid because he's like the youngest one in the group when they do their heist, when they're prepping for it. So,
I think his character does a really good job of sort of underlining the challenges and the problems with the Empire that everyone knows about, but no one really wants to do anything about because no one wants to pay the price for standing up against it. Because they do a good job of making people afraid, right? That's how the whole show starts out, with Andor against the Corpos.
And that was interesting too. The idea of the Empire knows it can't subjugate all these planets, so they have these corporations basically control these planets, and they have like a council, so they have to go basically talk to the Empire about what's going on, and there was consequences for if they make a mistake. Basically the Empire takes over. It almost seems like this really tense alliance of, we just have to do enough to not have the Empire move in, like we're trying to toe the line enough to not have the Empire come in and take over our business, kind of.
I didn't take it that way. I took it more of like, as long as we stay invisible, we can do whatever we dang well please.
Yeah, that's true too, I think. Yeah, I think you're right.
So, it's driven largely by greed. I mean, the head inspector on Morlana 1 in the beginning, right?
He's the only one.
Inspector about like, just drop it, just let it go.
Yeah, the young inspector was played by his real name's Kyle Solar, and his character's name is Cyril Karn. Yeah. I'm trying to see if I can. Oh, his boss right here, Rupert Van Sedar. He was Chief Hain. He was the one that he was talking to. That Chief Hain was the one he was talking to. That I really love all that because Chief Hain really laid it out for him. Because Cyril turned in that report, and
Cyril had just listened.
Yeah.
Andor wouldn't be Andor.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is his boss, I think, legitimately said the right thing. He said, "Listen, it sounds like these guards that were killed by Andor, were in the wrong place. They were doing something illegal, and they were basically..."
That wasn't supposed to happen or exist.
Yeah, a place wasn't supposed to happen or exist. They were, they were in an area they weren't allowed. It's illegal for even them to be there, and they were spending money they shouldn't have spent. Something like that. They were trying to do something illegal because they were at I think they were at a brothel, Star Wars equivalent of brothel.
So they're at a brothel that isn't supposed to be where it was, and it was that expensive one. So they have money they're not supposed to have.
Yeah.
Like, this creates too many questions, so don't pursue it.
And they're in a bad part of town. Who knows who they talk to, which is exactly what happened, If Cyril would have been like, "Oh, you're right," But his kind of rigid thing of the truth and what's right, which I don't know if you watch honest trailers, but they do a lot of, they do spoofs of shows and they talk over them. They did one of Andor, and they give people unique names at the end. They're like starring, and they'll like make fun of their names. They just showed Cyril screaming at someone in silence, and it's like, "Respect my authority," which I thought was like a really good. I thought it was like a really good thing of like, that's kind of what it is, and it's the idea of like, that's how he's able to wield power, as he's in charge. I think Cyril, you see his home life with his mother, which just seems like a terrible existence, where he just wakes up every morning and eats space cereal with blue milk and wants to be left alone. And his mom's like, "So are you looking for a job? I'll call your uncle," and, she's very passive aggressive. It reminds me of like any kind of ethnicity of like, you have the Italian mother or the Jewish mother, or anybody that uses
passive aggressive, but she's also extremely meddlesome.
Yeah. She'll listen to his phone calls. She'll do all that kind of stuff of like,
yeah.
But all that stuff of like, then I don't know. What I wanted to focus on, because obviously Gaming with Grief and all that, we do movies and stuff, or something. I don't know, my wife and I cover movies and stuff. The idea is like, what I think was really important about, especially the last episode, was the funeral. The fact that this kicks off with a funeral, and the idea that, the prison was powerful, that whole thing with the prison, but the fact that he gets out of prison and basically makes a phone call home and says, "Hey, tell Maeve or Marva that I love her," and somebody says that actress name is Fiona Shaw. I've seen her in a lot of stuff, but he calls home and his friend's like, she died, and it just breaks him. It's just crazy. And but I like that. I heard theories online or listened to different reviews where people thought maybe she was alive, and I thought she was dead. And I think it was very powerful that he never got to have another moment with her, because you've lost people in your life, I've lost people in my life. You always think you're going to have one more time. And when you get the phone call or whatever, you're like, what? I just
Yeah.
talked to them X hours ago or whatever. And I think for her to be alive would like cheapen everything that they've kind of built up, especially towards that funeral. Well, I mean, the funeral would
Yeah.
happen if she is alive, but the idea that like she's alive, oh, that didn't really matter. All those speeches they gave each other about, they really were saying goodbye because he had to leave town because he was on the lam.
Yep.
It wouldn't have meant what it meant if she was alive, because he would have maybe seen her at like a fuel depot or something, and she'd be like, oh hey, then how do you do it? Like it's just yeah it. And I like the fact that
No,
she just
I
died of
don't
natural
think
causes.
that's a really weird, fan theory in my opinion. Like you said, it cheapens the whole thing. It cheapens the relationship. I don't think based off of what we've seen in the writing from Tony Gilroy on this,
Yep.
I don't think he would do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem right for the show. It doesn't seem right for the way that he writes. But
Yeah.
and the whole funeral scene, right? Like you said, it sort of kicks everything off. Like the whole show is building up to that moment where she gives her huge final speech. It just sort of pushes everyone over the edge.
Yeah.
And for Andor, it's that sort of uh, realization in that moment. Even though he's not really there listening to the speech, he's in the prison at that point in time, working on rescuing Bix, isn't he? Or does he go in after the chaos begins? He goes in after the chaos begins.
Yeah. 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 Well, he also
Um,
figures out that Stellan Skarsgård character. Oh man, I always forget his name. He's right here.
Luthen.
Luthen, yeah, he's right here. Luthen Rawl. He realizes he's there, and the only reason he would be there is to kill him because it's a loose end.
Yep.
He knows his name. He doesn't know that much about him, but he knows his name at least, and that's bad. And he knows his face, so he's
Okay.
there to kill him, which makes sense. It kind of made me sad, but I get it. Like when Stellan Skarsgård's character showed up, I was like, damn, you know what I mean? Like darn it, like I get it. I wish it didn't
Yeah.
happen because you guys could work, which you will work together again. Which is, I think,
Yeah.
the end of the first season was a great line of like either kill me or take me in.
Yeah.
I want this one or the other. Like I want it to be over with, or we can keep working together, stuff like that. So
And it's a great way to kick off what's coming. If I remember correctly, I remember seeing something that it's already been extended for another 2 seasons.
so they had 2 seasons, and now it'll be 4.
No, it'll be 3. There's 2 more seasons,
Oh, I got you. Yeah, I don't know.
from what I understand.
I just think even Marva's thing about we were asleep, and they're very powerful or whatever, and we need to wake up. Like we can't you know we fight, especially in her death speech saying fight the Empire. She probably didn't know that the Empire was going to crack down as much that they were going to be there. She just probably thought they were going to play it for the town. Everybody's going to gather around town square, see that, and then
Maybe. I mean, but at the same time, right? Like she was there as they were beginning their crackdown.
that's
Right?
true. Because
So
when did she record the message? Did she see them moving in?
exactly.
Yeah, did she see them moving in and going, I'm literally gonna go out with a bang. Like there's no point anymore. And that was that, and we talked about this offline, but like just to bring it up, the idea that she died. She didn't fight. She didn't do a heist. She didn't take over a fuel depot. I think she said to someone, or somebody said of her, like, no, she was cleaning the old tunnels because she thought the rebels could use it. So she was just sweeping up and making sure like a supply line was clean, and probably making sure that had power. I imagine if that's what she went and did. I think they said that's what she was going to do. I don't know if they ever confirmed if that's what she did. But
I mean, hopefully we'll find out the next season.
yeah, but I mean, Cassian uses that whole underground section at the end to kind of sneak around. And it's like, how much of that was possible because of her just sweeping up and making sure there was power there? It's like she helped him even in the end, And so that was the one thing that I think a lot of people didn't really talk about. It's like, no, let's really zoom in on this funeral because I think funerals in movies and shows that I've seen, it's always like the after the funeral. It's always, sometimes there's a eulogy. Sometimes you're in a church and then it's always cut to people eating, very quiet, very awkward, people cleaning up, and then some dramatic scene happens there. But just to have like a full build up to the marching band comes on the street, which that was a solemn banger of a marching a funeral procession, I did like their Star Wars instruments where it looked like a clarinet and a flute taped together, though. I mean, it had some cool space stuff on it, but I was like, is that a clarinet and a flute, like, taped together, basically? I mean, it was all good. The drum beat, like, all that kind of stuff of, the guy in the tower running the bell, the hammer guy with, which, by the way, if you use hammers for a living and say, well, you're in this town, there's a guy up top of a tower that uses hammers for a living, and your CO says, go take the tower, would you just climb a ladder and try to, I don't know what he was trying to do, but the fact that the hammer operator turned around and basically foot stomped him off the tower, I was like, who thought that was a good idea to just walk up the tower? And I don't know, it's poor, well, I'm not going to say poor stormtroopers, but
I mean, he's not a soldier, right? Like, he's just a guy with a hammer.
Double. He's got double maces. You dual wield the clock tower. Like, it's a dual wielding clock tower attendant. I don't know. I think.
I think everyone was super angry, and he knew how to use his tools well.
Yeah, but I like the fact what really kicks off the fighting is, they try to cover up the message, which is kind of symbolic of them trying to cover up. I don't think I have that lieutenant's name that was like kind of Weasley in that base. It was like, oh, we could do this and this, and the ISB officer showed up and was like, no, you have to do this and this and let them come out, let them whatever. We want to flush them out, But the idea that they started fighting when he tried to cover the message and couldn't, then kick the droid over. So then it was like, well, it's on now.
I love how much that the female ISB agent, like the main one that they follow, and what's her character name?
Oh yeah, I have it right here. Deidre.
Right.
Deidre, yeah.
So Deidre's like competent.
She is.
And the Empire is sort of like, oh yeah, she's got some good ideas.
Well,
like the other ISB folks are trying to like tamp her down and suppress her, and the one sort of ISB leader is like, oh yeah, like she's got some good ideas. So like,
I'm trying to find that. I've seen that guy in a lot of stuff too. That see if I could see his.
Game of Thrones. I've seen him in some other stuff too.
I'm scanning he should be on here. It's so weird that he's not.
I'm sure he is. And so I think it's kind of funny that like at the end, again, it's another scenario where if they'd listened to one of the more wise characters, things would be very different.
Well, too, what I like about her job is she's not a soldier, she's an analyst, right? So she's looking at all this paperwork. I do like any show, as someone who finished a book last night and started another one who's trying to read more, anytime they can make reading or studying kind of thrilling, that makes me excited, like when she's dividing files with her assistant, like you read 2 files and I'll read 2 files and we'll figure out what's going on. And the fact that she literally is just reading, which strangely enough, I read something about the CIA, Bob Woodward, who was a former CIA agent. He wrote several memoirs. They based one of those memoirs off the movie Syriana with George Clooney and stuff. They did like an interview with him and he said, I think he goes, I'm not going to lie, there is black ops stuff the CIA does, but he says, the misconception I think a lot of people have of the CIA is there is a lot of reading. You're constantly reading newspapers, you're reading memoirs, you're reading you're reading text messages, you're just reading a lot. You're reading history books, you're just trying to disseminate all this information. He said there's more reading, I think, than people think, because you think it's all, action stuff like with Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it's really you just sitting down at a desk reading things. And I like that they highlighted that in the show of like the pattern of what the rebels are stealing isn't really a pattern, or it is kind of maybe. And the Empire's like, well, we need to crack down on this one thing. And she's like, they don't care about that. They're going to do whatever they do, And that's what made her pretty exceptional of, we need to wait, And they did that thing with the ship where they caught one of the rebel leaders and they were going to rough him up. And she's like, don't let him go. But if they let him, if they let him go, well, let's make it look like an accident. They had to be very careful, And then Luthen, leading the rebellion, had to go to Saw Gerrera, which shout out to that scene where, Saw was going to work with this, I forget the guy's name, Karen or whatever, that they were going to turn over. And he said, well, they know that he's coming. And Saw's like, so should I tell him? And he's like, if you tell him, he's going to know we know, and, they're going to know that we know. Yeah.
So that whole sequence. And it's hard, right? Like, it really digs into, like, the difficulty of, in wartime, essentially, to them, it's wartime.
Yeah, I heard somebody make fun of that
Extremely
line.
difficult choices to make.
Yeah, I heard somebody, one of the reviews, they said they made fun of that line, because he said it's war then. And they go, oh, you mean like a Star War? And I didn't think it was funny. I thought he was really weighing it, going, I guess this is what this is. We have to play the long game. And I didn't like the guy, but we had several because there was a good build up in that episode of like Sod didn't want to work with him, they didn't get along, he didn't want him to tell him what to do, but in the end he was like, I don't want him obviously to die. We just disagree with how to do things, but like yeah, I guess I have to make the choice to. And I think didn't Luthen after that go to the planet and like wasn't he like miles away with his Star Wars binocular and didn't he look at the depot they were gonna hit or something? What wasn't he there like looking like? Oh yeah, it's because he felt bad. So I think he was far away, kind of looking. I think he was looking in the distance, going, "Yep, that's where he's gonna die." Basically, like I can't do anything, But yeah, I mean, it's. I think I texted you last night. I went and had a beer at a bar, and a guy just mentioned to somebody next to him at a table next to me, like, "Hey, you should really watch a show called Andor." And I turned and was like, sorry to interrupt, but Andor is amazing, and we talked for like 20 minutes about Andor and stuff. So,
Yeah. Oh, it's such a phenomenal show. It does such a good job, sticking with the theme of grief, right? Like they really do deal a lot with varied aspects of grief in people's lives. Um, the part we're just talking about, like the grieving process of your morality, having to make that decision between life and death for another
right.
person to move forward a cause. Luthen's speech towards the end when he's talking to his mole in the ISB, and he was like, "Sacrifice? What have I?"
Oh yeah, it was like the 6th episode or whatever when that guy met him and had a kid and was like, "I want out," and he's like, "That's not how this works." Which is like the mob, but I totally get what he's saying. He's like, yeah, what have I given up? Sunrises, love, like I've given up everything, because I have to live this double life, and I can never ease up, I can never let go, I can never let my guard down.
I mean, it's fantastic. The grieving process for Andor, for Marva, and the way he goes through that whole like I have to go away, I can't be here, but I love this foster mother of mine, right?
Well, even
she rescued him.
Even that last speech he gave to her when he was on the lam, and he's like, "We have to go. I'm going to take you. We'll go." And she says, I can't do that." And then the one line she says, which I love, where she says, he says, "But I'll always worry about you if you don't come with me." And she says, "Well, that's just love, Yeah. And I was like, "Fuck!" I just like stopped. I was like, "Man, that's so true." Or at the end, when at the funeral, as the funeral procession's going on, where his friend, I forget that guy's name. I'll look that up really quick. But he hugs him, says, "I'm so sorry." What's his name? Brassa, yeah. He should be in the. They kind of put him deep. It's a scrolling thing I have to do, so I have to like look through the scroll to see.
Doing the IMDb thing.
Well, it's on the top cast on Google, so it's on the top bar where you have to like scroll through because they're. Anyway, he says that where he said she wanted me to tell you, that she could love you more than anything you could do wrong, and I was like, oh my god, I was like, that's such a great line, Or there is a character too that I think that another thing of grief that doesn't get talked about a lot, but I really like was Vel. She was the blonde spy female on the mission, and she loves Sintra. Val is played by Faye Marsay. I've seen her before, and Sintra's played by Verada Sethu, I think is her name. I probably totally screwed that up, but the idea that Val loves Cinta. And I think Cinta loves Val, but the fact is Cinta is younger, I think, and is kind of all in on the cause. Several episodes, she basically went deep undercover and worked in the bar across the street from Marva's place or something like that, like right next door. So she could keep an eye on the place to see if he was showing up. And she's so embedded in that she has no time for love. You know what I mean? Even though I think she does love Val, but I think Val is a little bit older, does believe in the cause, but just wants to find love in a way. And I think that there's grief in that thing. There's that last scene where Val actually shows up, and then Val's trying to hug her and talk to her, and then tell Sintra to come away from the window because she's spying on her. And then and then Sintra's like, "What? There's no time for this," basically. And it's really heartbreaking. There's grief in that, and realizing I guess they don't love you the way you love them or something, like that idea of we don't have time for this. Like, this is what it's about.
No, and that whole relationship actually does a really good job too of highlighting that. Of course, Belle's a completely different background and upbringing than Cintra, right? Like you can tell Cintra came up hard and had a really difficult life, and we find out that Val is nephew or not nephew,
Cousin.
but like cousin.
Which I thought was a front, but
My
they
mom.
really then like 2 episodes in, you realize they really are related, and it really is what it is. Because I thought, oh, that's a good cover. She could just be the distant cousin that comes in, but it's like no, they really are related, and they talk about it. Like
That adds such a deep level to that character too, because she's out there living out in the wilderness with all of the people getting ready to do their op on the payroll, and
oh yeah, the
like
planet.
she's living hard and she's sacrificing. And you realize
Aldani was the planet. Aldani was Aldani.
She grew up with a silver spoon in her mouth.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and
So
just living in the brush is rough. Like just her like in a tent. The Star Wars equivalent of a tent is rough. Yeah. So, and then Mon Mothma's whole story of I didn't realize until that one episode where she made the confession to Val, but she had been basically taking money from her family and putting it in the rebellion. And then the end, Val says, "Well, what is missing?" And she's like, "For what, 40,000 or $400,000 credits or whatever." And so, some of that you can make go away, but like that's such a massive amount of money. Somebody's going to ask a question about, and they already did, and that's why she went to her friend in the Senate. He was from the same planet as her, but they were in the Senate together. I got his name too. I've seen him in other stuff too. Ben Miles is his real name, but he played Tay Colma. They were like,
banker.
yeah, no, he's her friend, not the banker. He's the one that's like, oh, I asked around about moving the money type thing, and yeah. And then I'm trying to see if they have the banker on here. That dude, I don't want to disrespect that banker. I don't know if I don't know if he's on here, but let me just say, the moment he was on screen, they made him look like the worst individual. They did such a great makeup job. I want to see him without his makeup and stuff because that man, whoever the illegal banker was, they were going to launder their money with. The moment you see him, you're like, this guy is the sleaziest guy. I mean, he is the embodiment of a mobster that like walks in the room and you're just like, ugh. Like he just, and he did a great job. I'm sure he looks like, amazing. But when I was like, I don't want to be in a room with that guy. Like he looked really good.
And even Mon Mothma's character, right? Like, again, sticking with the theme of grief, right? Like Mon Mothma's character, the sacrifices she's making, like having to give her daughter over to.
Oh, Avin, they're just meeting. It's just a meeting, right? Yeah, right. Yeah. No, but that whole thing of like, not only that, but like the fact that like when you're married in a relationship, you kind of want the same things, right? You want to go in the same direction, And for her husband, like you said, I just got him right here. Alistair Mackenzie's his real name. He's Perrin. I don't like his last name, Firtha, but anyway. The fact that, like you said, he likes status. He likes the status of the Empire. He likes the parties.
Power. It gives him money. It gives him influence, right?
Right. And Mon Mothma doesn't want any. She'll use all of that to get help the rebels, but she doesn't want that. In fact, she they make fun of the fact her and her daughter, or Perrin and her daughter, basically make fun of the fact that she is, she's going for a good cause. You're doing one of your fundraisers or one of your whatever. And her daughter is religious, right? And they said, and it was sad, that scene with Mon and her Val, her cousin, when they're standing there and Val's like, oh, she's got to do this. And she's like, no, she likes doing it. And it's the only thing she's on time for. And, she cares about this. And it's like, oh, so not only is it like the Empire, but it's like religion as well of, because they kept talking about clinging to the old ways. If you like listen to them chanting, and you're just like, oh, that's just another layer of oh crap, like.
Yeah, it's such a bad thing for your kids to be religious.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, if you're in a position of Mon Mothma is, she's like, like that's another layer of oh crap, like.
It's not that her daughter is religious. It's that her daughter is holding on to religious traditions that Mon Mothma has let go of and doesn't agree with. Same as Val.
Yeah.
Just to clarify on that, Joe, because you don't want to come across that you have a problem with religious people. Because
I don't.
You don't.
No, I don't. No, but I'm just saying, to me, it's like, for her, she looks at it as another problem, but her daughter looks at it as something that she believes in. She's like, oh crap, like, oh no, like if I didn't have enough on my plate,
like some rather antiquated ideas, even like by our standards, right? Like it sounds like they had ideas of like arranged marriages and other stuff as a part of that, the old ways, and that was a big part
That
of.
seemed like that was her planet's thing.
Yeah,
Mon Mothma.
maybe.
Like, and then since her daughter is obviously offspring, they're like, are you gonna? Because didn't that sleazy money guy, didn't he mention that? Like, people think that's out of fashion, raising your children in the old way or whatever, because he obviously would do his homework and know about her. Like, oh yeah, you guys have arranged marriages, let's make this work, and like, it's like son of a.
Well, he's from the same planet, right?
Yeah, because he mentioned that, like, oh, I haven't been there in a while or something or whatever he said. Yeah.
Interesting side note: I saw an article the other day where they were talking about
Oh,
like
Diego
costume
Luna.
design.
Sorry, Diego Luna did get nominated for a Golden Globe, right? He sent me that.
Yes, he did.
That's amazing.
Uh, they were talking about costume design for the show, and so the show actually was like, okay, well, this is like pre episode 4, pre New Hope, and so like we want it to be sort of in that same stylization of costumes and appearance of the characters that they used back then. So like we went with the 70s sort of style, which is why that the kind of sleazy mobby banking guy had like long sideburns.
Oh yeah.
And some other stuff that they did that was sort of period specific to the movies.
Yeah, Perrin had a lot of like Asian themed. Like it almost looked like he was wearing like some weird what you consider like a Bushido outfit, like a very silk robe. His hair, he had like a ponytail, and his hair was cut very nice. It was very much like this regal. You know what I mean? As far as showing Coruscant, I mean the costuming was amazing. I'm really amazed at they're not. It was before the Battle of Yavin. So like there was a lot of aliens, but if you look at who was serving in the Empire, it's always humans. So these senators are from other systems, but again, the Empire is xenophobic. They don't like. I do like the fact that they alluded to, because I always thought about that Star Wars, like where are all these humans coming from? And they said something about, I think Cassian, he's a human from this planet, meaning that they're like kind of all over. Han was a human from wherever he was, I forget where, but like there's human species on different planets, where it's like you're human from this planet, you're whatever. Like a long time ago in a galaxy far away, there was like a pioneering spirit where everybody went off and went to different planets and stuff. So
sort of I can't think of Foundation, sort of like.
Oh yeah, that I still have to watch on Apple TV. It's only a few episodes, I think. Foundation.
6 or 8. I don't remember. The Foundation, the series, does not follow the books very closely.
Yeah, I heard the books are pretty dense, so they're probably like reading and going, we kind of want to adapt this, but.
Not really, actually. I personally would think it's the other way around.
Oh.
Asimov wrote very light and let the reader fill in a lot of what they wanted to see in it.
Well,
that's my own opinion.
Well, he was Asimov was like one of the first sci-fi writers too. So, you look at old work from people like that are writing in a genre. Like I even read H.P. Lovecraft. He invented cosmic horror kind of in a way, and it's not really that descriptive. It's very, like you said, it lets the reader kind of fill in the blanks. But if you think about back then, just mentioning stuff like that, like Asimov or H.P. Lovecraft, like your mind would go to so many crazy places. Like what is screaming under the ground, like stuff like that, or like what is in space, like that kind of stuff. If you just described stars, I don't know. I back to Andor. I think that the people didn't focus enough on the funeral. I think because the fact that this is and two, once this kicks off, I don't know, they kind of show the battle. Andor leaves, he gets his friends out. You don't know how it's going to go for Ferrix, for the planet, Fenix or whatever. And so, Ferrix. Yeah, Ferrix. Did they get crushed or did they make it out? No one knows. We don't know. So I hope in the next season they talk about the, what happened. Like, here's the, well, it appears to be the consequences of my own actions type thing of like, what's going to happen? Like, so I'm excited to see, how that comes to be.
Hands down. I mean, simultaneously, I think it's really cool. And simultaneously, it was kind of like the one thing about the show that bothered me is that it has the feel, and you and I talked about this, that Andor's sort of accidental killing of these 2 guards is the thing that kicks off the whole rebellion. And you and I talk about it, and you brought up a very good point. Like this kind of stuff probably happening all over, right? Like
Right.
Luthen's traveling all over the galaxy.
Yeah, and Mon Mothma
They're
and him.
talking about
Yeah.
Axis, running these different things that seem like they're disconnected, but
Right.
really are.
Yeah.
So Andor is just sort of one person in this whole thing, but it really has the feel of like there's a shift in the culture. There's a shift in the perception, right? Of what happened on Ferrix. Now, it's the Empire, right? Like, they just bury the story. It doesn't get
Well,
out.
they're not going to talk about it, and I don't think those guards in the very first episode would have been talked about if that guy didn't get that report and push it up to his superior. There's no way. It would have been like 2 corpos dead, the supervisor.
If Cyril had done what he was told. Yeah, give him something like they were trying to help somebody. Nothing heroic. We don't want a parade.
Yeah, and then also, that episode where it goes bad for Cyril and Andor gets out of there with Luthen and there's explosions and they put explosions in that truck, the space truck, the Star Wars truck, blow it up and all those guards die and Cyril's just looking around like, what have I done? I remember right when it ended, the credits were going, I was like, oh man, his boss is coming back from that conference and gonna be like, what? Because there was a scene like that when the Empire's there and the guy and his boss was like, I didn't have anything to do with this, sir. And it was like, I was at the conference you were at and I got back in this and I felt so bad for that dude. He's probably working in a mine like the rest of them or whatever their depot jobs they have. You're just like, oh my, that guy. He's the tragic hero of all this. Andor had agents. Yeah, he is. Because Cyril kept going, and Cyril's, he, at the end of his, when he saved Deidre or whatever, he's going to be somehow promoted or given some position because he did save her, and I do like that she was in a little bit of jeopardy. I thought she was going to die, and she didn't, because she's an analyst.
It shows that, she's an analyst. Exactly. It shows that she's not a frontline person. She's not a combat person.
And that idea too of firing on civilians. I mean, I know it's Star Wars, but you do get that feeling when they start firing on them. You're like, oh man, yeah, the kid did detonate a bomb, but like the fact that they're literally unarmed. Everybody else is unarmed, and they just start firing on civilians. You're like, this is not gonna go well. And the fact that blaster bolts will lift people up in the air and just kill them, one shot, one kill. And we saw that in the prison, the few episodes earlier about. You get shot, you're dead. That's it. All that kind of stuff. It's just like, oh man, So it.
I have my own opinions about that because that's just Hollywood dramatization.
Yeah, because they're early, like the episode 4, 5, and 6, people just fall over, but they'd still die. And plus, it was the heroes, right, in 4, 5, and 6. So like they would get winged a lot, and Andor got winged, but you do have that, what do they call it, plot armor or whatever. I didn't mind it as much because it was a public gathering and the Empire just opened fire. So you're like, well, I
didn't mind it. It's dramatic, it's powerful, but it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, it would never actually happen.
Plus,
in movies where people get hit with a shotgun and they fly back, no, they don't.
Yeah, one thing it really made me question though, in a weird nerd nuts and bolts way, was like, wow, blaster bolts are just very inaccurate. How do snipers work? Because it really seems like with the sights you have in a blaster rifle, you're just hoping it goes in that direction. So I kind of understand the stormtrooper's plight of not being able to hit anything when you watch people get in a firefight. In this show, which I think is really good, you're like, they're really just hoping it goes down range, I guess, and hits somebody. Like, there's no, how do you zero in your blast? I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, that also is something that's really wait a minute, aren't these basically lasers? Shouldn't they be perfectly accurate?
Yeah. Well, whatever the technology is, you notice it's not a sustained laser, so it's however they made the technology, they're like, just throw it. It's like a laser catapult that just throws a section of laser. I don't know, but
musket.
Yeah, a laser musket. That's all it is. I'm like, well, let's hope it gets down there.
Suddenly they're dwarves with blunderbusses.
Yeah, and they're kicking butt. Yeah, they do talk about in some of the literature, people having older weapons too. And you saw Andor's kin. So they were on that planet, Andor and his clan, I guess, or whatever tribe. It looked like they were crashed from some other something, because remember they see that ship and they're speaking another language. I like that they didn't subtitle it because you really have to infer what's going on. Go ahead.
So we watched the episode last night. Watched the first episode. So he's Kenari.
Yeah.
So he's from the planet Kenari. Uh, and if I remember correctly, they talk about it a little bit later in the show. So Kenari had been like an imperial mining planet that the Empire had just like mined into oblivion and had like poisoned it so much there was a huge ecological disaster that the Empire buried, which is why people aren't familiar with Kenari. That's why when they were doing their investigation, they're not able to find out a whole lot about Kenari. And so I get the sense that the kids, because like Andor's people, Casa's people, kind of had their little Lord of the Flies thing going on. I think it's like the surviving kids of all these parents.
Oh, yeah, that's a
incident or
because it looked like they had quasi uniforms on or something. You know, they weren't wearing like leaves that they had stitched together. It was like these are like uniforms that are torn, obviously, and stuff. But it looks like they
patched together.
Yeah.
From other stuff that they had available to them, right? And they're hiding out in the woods. So my guess is like whatever disaster happened on the planet killed off the parents. The kids were maybe at home or somewhere else, and they had to flee into the woods.
And they all kind of met each other in the same place. Like, okay, we're gonna build our our Lost Boys tree fort, whatever, because we don't know what else to do. But I love the fact that they use blowguns. I like that there was another mining disaster, which, I mean, happens in mining. You know, it's like there could have been an explosion. There could have been a noxious gas thing that their masks weren't prepared for, even though it's, you know, and that's one of the things.
Some kind of an ecological disaster, if I remember. I think at some point they talk about Kenari was a cover-up because there was an ecological disaster. So it's probably, you know, the environment got poisoned in some capacity.
Yeah, they like poisoned the groundwater or something through mining, you know, or like the Star Wars equivalent
released some sort of toxin that was buried in the.
Yeah, well, there was that green mist around and everything, remember? And some of the guys were dead. They were like pale or whatever. I remember that. I don't know. It's just, and you know, the grief of him being knocked out, and like a lot of people complain about the first 2 episodes being slow, but like the fact that he wanted to go back and like avenge his sister or family member, because that wasn't his sister. And then he found her dead, and then he started smashing the machine because he didn't get anything, and he just said, you know, he's uneducated, you know, because of his whatever happened to him, and he, you know, he's just literally lashing out. And the fact that Marva saw him, and she said to her friend, who I forgot, it took me a while to connect that the guy she was with, and because they were trying to get parts, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "He'll be dead if the Empire shows up. They'll just kill him. So we either take him with us or he's dead. They'll kill everybody that was here if they find him, you know? So we're actually helping out by taking him." But I didn't realize till the flashbacks that Andor had later, that was the same guy who was like cleaning the radiator. It looked like a little radiator. And he's like, people don't realize the rust on this. If you clean it, you'll get 500 credits. Or like, if you just, you know, and that was kind of an analogy for, you know, people don't look down. I love that speech that Andor gave to Stellan Skarsgård too. His whole reason for stealing for the Empire, how he was able to, because Stellan was like, "How are you able to do this?" When they meet, he's like, "How was I able to?" They don't look down. They don't care. They're fat, happy. You know, you just have to pretend to be one of them, and you are. You know, like
you walk in with a toolbox.
Yeah, you have a uniform, you have a toolbox, you're fine. You know, they don't care. You know that idea, and then that's reinforced in the prison. Well, it's reinforced later, but in the prison when he's like, you know, how many people? You know, Andy Serkis again. He should get a Golden Globe for supporting actor right there. Where's his? Was that in the list? Did you see that in the? No, that's
no. Some Star Wars fan page shared the Diego Luna nomination, so I didn't like go digging. I'm not a giant like Golden Globes fan.
No, people bag on awards all the time, but like if you hear on the back end, what awards do is obviously they give visibility to your project, and if you're involved in like production or acting, it's easier for you to get things done later, and you can ask for more money. So if you're like a starving artist that makes an Oscar-winning or Emmy-winning film, the next thing you go to do, you can go back and say, "Well, I did win an Emmy, so I want this much money now." You know, so not that they have to accept your offer, but you could at least ask. But I think his idea when he talked to Kino, when Andor talked to Kino when they were in the prison, and he said, how did he put it? He said,
Pause real quick, because I had to look it up. Diego Luna is only the second person ever to be nominated for a Golden Globe in anything Star Wars related.
What was the first one? Do you know?
I don't know. It doesn't say here.
Well, even, I think too, if it was to win an award, I think people that think Star Wars is dumb sci-fi would be able to go, "Oh, the actor won a Golden Globe for that show? Maybe I should watch that show," you know? Like it...
Alec Guinness's supporting role in A New Hope was the only other performance that garnered attention from the Golden Globes.
You know what's funny about that?
Luna is the only person to be nominated as a lead.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, if it comes to pass, it'll be great because like I said, anybody that thinks that sci-fi is dumb, like you and I like sci-fi, but there's people out there that just don't like it or don't take it seriously. But if it wins an award, people start to look and go, "Oh, that won an award," like maybe I should watch that. But
It's not some art piece. No, this was an amazing drama piece set in wartime, dealing with struggle and loss and like moral quandary.
yeah, and well, like he said to Kino, like to finish my thought on the prison,
Yeah,
for him to say how many guards are there, and he goes, they'll hear us, and he goes, they don't have to listen to us, they don't care, they don't, this doesn't bother them at all, they don't care about us, they don't think about us. So how many guards are on each floor? And then I love when they found out that they burned a floor, they killed everybody on the floor because they were just recycling, you're supposed to get out of your sentence, but they were just sending you to another level, and then someone figured it out. The Empire burned the floor, literally electrocuted him to death, and they had an elderly guy there that died. And when the medic was talking to him, there's no way out. Nobody's getting out. Here's what's happened. I love when they got up and then Degalu said how many people on each floor, and Kino said no more than 12. I was like, that's my boy right there. And then just that moment they have with him the next episode where he's in his cell looking at the wall and they just have the camera on his face and they're all yelling and he's really wondering, like, should I say, what should I do? You really see him struggle, like, and then he finally just says, we're not, only one way out. We're not getting out of here. They don't care. Make it look real. Blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, yeah. And that thing where they're running out, where they just scream one way out. In fact, Honest Trailers, who makes a bunch of jokes, when they got to that section, the announcer goes, 3 prison episodes that were so good. Like they didn't even make fun of that whole thing, and they showed that scene where they're running out saying one way out, one way out. I was like, hell yeah. Like you can't make fun of that. Like it was great, so I just tell everybody that, like, yeah, you don't like the first 2 episodes of Andor, but please just, like, I thought all that stuff was thrilling. I liked how the inciting incident with him killing the people paid off, but some people might go, oh, I didn't like that, it was slow, there wasn't any lightsaber battles or blah. It's like, no, just watch what's going on. And I hate telling people, though, to, like, the worst thing I hate, especially with games, it happens a lot with video games, man, I really didn't like the first 2 hours. Well, like around hour 6 or 7, it gets really good. It's like, that's so much time. Like, I have to be hooked right away. I'm not going to spend 15 hours going, when does this get good? Like a show, you can dip off after an hour and say it's not me. But games, a lot of that bothered me because you're like, come on, man. Like, just no, like it's either got to hit or it doesn't, And so, for me, Andor hit. Like from the opening moments, I was like just tunnel vision into what was happening. I think I texted you right after I watched the first episode. It's like, you're right.
You did.
Yeah, and I was like, you're right. I'll keep.
It's so good, and I'm so glad that Diego Luna got the nomination for Best Performance.
Yeah.
I think it's Best Performance in Television Series, Drama.
I would say go, I think it's still on Netflix, but go watch Michael Clayton. It's very good. I think it came out in the early 2000s, and you see him there. I think he wrote and directed it for years, and it's really, really good.
It's not on Netflix.
They took it off? Carla checked like 3 weeks ago or something, like a month ago, and it was on. So they might have taken it off. Stuff rotates all the time.
Oh, I'm not logged in on this computer, so I can't just like sign in and check it. But I went looking for it and I didn't see it.
I would say if it's rentable even on Amazon Prime for a couple bucks, it would definitely be a movie night for you and Lisa, because it's one of those things where there's lines even in that I don't want to ruin, that people say to each other, just like Andor, where you're like, I'm going to remember that. Like when Anna or whatever goes to Luthen's antique shop, which I love the fact that he sells antiques. And the assistant, her name isn't Leia, but it's close to Leia. I'm trying to see if I can see her.
It's like Leia or something like that.
She not on the list? What? She's not on here? I'll tell you, the person who plays Mon Mothma looks much different. She's got long hair in this photo. I'm like, whoa, that's Mon Mothma? Mothma, yeah. Let's see here. Keep going. What? Oh, here we go. Oh, they don't have her on here. But anyway, the assistant, when Anna's like, I don't have much time or something, and she says, I don't have sometimes, I have always. Meaning, like, you're looking at this one event, but I'm having to be vigilant. Clea. she's like, I'm having to be vigilant all the time. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't a thing. Like, I have more things to worry about than you. So get out of here. Get out of my face. I'll say this too. I was a little heartbroken. So there's a scene when Clea goes to Faye Marseille's character and says, I need you to kill Andor, you know, because he's a loose end. And, to Vel. She goes to Vel and says, I need you to kill Andor. He's a loose end. And I was like, oh, she's a loose cannon. She's just saying this to protect Luthen, and Luthen isn't micromanaging everything. She's kind of she's gone rogue, right, in a way, you know? But then when he shows up to kill Andor at the end, I was like, oh, no, he did want him dead. Oh, well, okay. Like, I was like, I get it, Luthen. I'm not happy about it, but I understand, you know?
Well, and, you know, she's very protective of him. Like, she's watching out for him and his slipping. Like, put the radio away.
Yeah, you don't need to listen. The police scanner, the Imperial police scanner, he's trying to listen to see. Which, by the way, they wouldn't report that stuff right away. They'd probably bury that stuff. So I don't know what he thought he was going to hear. Maybe.
Well, I mean, he's listening to chatter. He's not listening to news broadcasts.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because they had to cut comms and all that stuff. Yeah, it was all really good. So I don't know, man. Andor is really good. It's really, really good. Watch Andor. You know what? If you don't like the first episode, what's that old saying? If I'm not back in 5 minutes, just wait longer. If you don't like the first episode, just wait longer. That's all. Just watch episode 2. Like, just
get through the first couple episodes before you really judge it. If you don't like the first couple episodes, but honestly, like, they do such a great job for building the backstory and the background of these characters that I think people should be. The kinds of people who are going to love the show are the ones who are already going to be sucked in by that backstory, because they're going to already have connections to the character.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's my thing is, like, I want to see stuff like this where you just sit with someone for a while, and like Marva, like you just sit with her and she is arguing with him. You know, she's elderly and she's infirmed. She wants to do more. She can't. And then she gets home and she's like, I can't wait anymore. I can't be asleep. I got to help, you know, and the fact that she's ailing, and they did do an aside of her not being able to, it sounds like, pay for her heat, or she didn't turn her heat up or something. And because everybody kept coming in going, oh, it's so cold in here. And he even said to her when he left, keep your heat at 60 degrees or whatever, you know, keep it. And she wasn't doing that, you know, like it was like maybe she didn't have money. You know, I don't know how retirement works in Star Wars, but I don't think she had a lot of cash laying around.
Or maybe she was spending her money in other ways.
Yeah, that too. Maybe that'll come. Maybe there'll be some weird gift in the next season. Like, who paid for all this? Like, oh, we got a donation from the daughters of Ferrix or whatever, you know, like, so, like she was involved in that type stuff. So, well, thank you everybody for listening to our incredibly special Christmas special of Andor. Avin was right. You have it on recording, Avin, and this will post to the internet. So you were right. I should have watched Andor much sooner. I hope when the next season comes out that they do like a double episode premiere. Like, I don't think I'll stay up till midnight, because they usually come out like on midnight. You know what I mean? It's like 3 a.m. Eastern time, so people stay up till midnight to watch it. I'm like, not doing that, but I definitely will watch it. You know, you have my attention now, as Leonardo DiCaprio. So yeah,
Yep.
That's it there this week, guys. I will talk to you next week. And if you're an American, you celebrate Christmas, you know, Merry Christmas and everything. If you don't, enjoy your day off. If you don't have a day off, try to have a good Sunday, because, you know, Sundays are Sundays. And it sucks if you have to work retail, as Avin has done before, and you got to work Sundays, especially on Christmas Day. I can't imagine it's great, especially in your service industry. I'm sure there's returns. People are just aggravated, you know. You got to work at a supermarket on Sunday. That's got to be the worst. So try to have a good day, and I will talk to you guys again next week.